Hey y'all, Matt here from the Sometimes Island. Please excuse the vertical video on this as we just started this podcast when we filmed this. And if you haven't, subscribe and like this video and prepare for more.
Trials and tribulations of getting a podcast set up. Do you want to tell people what happened earlier?
Yeah, I mean, we came here specifically to record this, and then the moment we sat down, we heard get death metal chord, and then it stopped for a minute. We're like, okay, I think we're good. But no, they started band practice the moment after we started trying to record. So we were forced to actually play music.
It was like the first downstroke of their rehearsal was right when we were about to hit like clap as our marker to start the.
They did it for us.
Yeah, oof. I've never seen those guys before.
We could have made it work too. It was just that every time after we put a noise gate on it, every time we talked, it would have been like blah 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 Nick at the same time.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, we're here. We almost bitched out too because we were like, okay, let's just like rehearse. Let's practice music. And then we grabbed a beer and we're like, we're actually in a pretty good conversation right now. That band's done. Let's try to get this thing out. Then another band started rehearsing, so we almost chickened out again. But we're here now. We're making it happen.
I don't know if I would say chicken out. I feel like it's scarier to play music than it is to just talk to each other.
Is it? Even though we've been in a band for 4 years.
You know what's scary? I'm going to tell you this story on the pod so that we have a record of it. Is the other night I was trying to go to sleep early and I felt like a bug on my arm or something when I grabbed my phone, and then I turned on the bedside light and I was like, oh, it's like a moth. Like I can see him flying around. And then I looked over to my left and I saw a spider leg over to the side of my bed. And then I sat up and there was a spider that I had trapped in that little space between your obliques on your back and your spine, and he had just bit me, and that was like my worst nightmare. You ever have nightmares about like having bugs in your bed?
Yeah.
That was like the recurring nightmare for my entire childhood. And then it happened, and I was shocked I wasn't more freaked out.
I feel like that bug had a fetish for like those lower dimples in your lower back. I was like, oh god.
That bug was messed up, dude.
Yeah.
It's like one of those there's like there was like a serial killer in Germany who's like a cannibal, and people would like reach out to him and be like, you can eat me or whatever. Like that was that spider.
Which is kind of a nice segue. Sometimes we dream. And we can dream about a lot of things. We can dream about, our ambitions. We can just literally have dreams at night.
Yeah.
You know what I thought about the other day is it's standard to ask someone, hey, how was your day?
Yeah.
And we're very adverse to not want to answer that.
I actually hate that question.
Right. Especially when you were a kid at school doing probably the same lesson plan for the past 10 days. And your mom's like, how was your day? And what was your usual response?
Good.
Or, I don't know. Right? Can you imagine how more adverse people would be to answering that question if it was common to say, hey, how was your dream last night?
That would be...
You never want to answer because it's always the most like effed up thing. The reason why I bring this up is because I read like a meme or something online where it's like there's no good way of trying to continue a sentence when you start off by telling them, hey, like you were in my dream last night, because it usually insinuates something sexual.
Kind of, yeah.
Or something messed up.
I guess. I don't really think that. If I feel like people have told me that all the time, and I was just always like, oh, what did I do?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But what if we were forced to answer that question? Right?
I kind of like the reality where that question of how was your day is replaced with like, what was your dream last night?
I think that it would probably be just a good therapy in an ironic way, just because those are our subconscious thoughts for the most part, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's your brain sorting through what happened the day before in a consequence-free environment. I was reading about this last night actually, because it was like, do pets dream, and like how do they dream or whatever, and we don't have the technology to see what like people are dreaming, but they did a study where they, being scientists, I can't remember, I can't cite the study or whatever. If I do figure it out, I'll put it in the show notes. But basically, dogs will dream and cats will dream, and they've proved this by, you can just prove it anecdotally by seeing them just like twitching around and like doing like little dog stuff or cat stuff or whatever. Their visual cortex is activated at the same time that they're dreaming, which is like what happens to humans, because like we're like visually replaying whatever had just happened to us during a day. And rats also dream. I think anything that has a spine dreams, and even flies dream about fly stuff.
Ugh. Do you remember what your last dream was?
No, but I write them all down. So
you do?
Yeah. I started doing that like 3 or 4 years ago, and it's great because it makes me actually remember my dreams. I feel like I can't immediately recall because I drank a beer or two, but it was something about like, this is why I write them down. I can't remember.
Okay. I wonder if there's like just, because they're the ones that people always bring up. And I think the most common one is, at least for me and my circle of friends, is the getting ready for something but just never getting anywhere.
Yeah.
Is the most anxiety-ridden dream, in my opinion, that you can have.
Yeah. I had a version of that dream like 2 or 3 years ago where I went to bed late because I hadn't packed for a flight that I had, like one of those like stupid early flights. And I had a dream that I woke up and I like finished packing and like drove to the airport and like got to the airport and I was like, oh, I left like a ton of time. Like, I'm just going to go over here and like hang out at this like airport restaurant or something. And then I looked up at the clock and was like, oh, I'm missing my flight. And I'm like sprinting over to get on the plane. And then I woke up and it was like 15 minutes before my alarm was supposed to go off at like 5:30 in the morning. And I had just gotten ready in my dream, and I had to like do it all over again.
Oh, so man!
Like, oh my
god! All right, I'm gonna shoot from the hip here, but I think the worst part of I think the worst part about those getting ready and still not being on time dreams is that, at least in my experience, you're running late for something and you're trying to accomplish whatever that one last task is or find that one last thing, but you're still never late.
What do you mean? Like,
meaning
in
like
the dream?
You're never ultimately late for that one thing that you're getting ready for. So you're like running late for like 5 hours, but never actually missing your deadline.
Yeah.
Which is the worst part. And then you just wake up and you're like, oh, thank God.
There's no payoff in dreams ever. If you're having a sexual dream, there's no payoff. If you're like eating ice cream in your dream, there's no payoff. You're always just like about to do something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And it's the most disappointing thing in the world. I think that's why everybody like universally hates talking about like, oh, I had a dream last night. And be like, ugh, who cares?
I think the best dream is when whatever that pinnacle moment is, if it's a bad pinnacle moment, you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm so glad that wasn't a real.
Yeah. Like, as far as science understands, dreams come from nightmares, because that's all dreams are. It's a way to like filter through what happened in your day in a consequence-free environment and create any connections between information that you might have learned that might help you in the future. The metal band has just resumed, by the way. I don't know if listeners can hear this. Hopefully not. So like in real life, if you're like walking through the jungle and then a tiger, like you hear a tiger and then it jumps out and kills you, like that's it. There's no learning. You're dead.
Yep.
But if you have a dream, it might teach you like, hey, don't walk through the jungle by yourself without knowing if there's tigers around or not. And you'll wake up and be like, ugh, that was a scary nightmare. But it actually like taught you something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Telling someone that you were in their dream is still, that's cool that you're not weirded out by it. You're like, oh, I want to know what was going on.
I mean, I'm already weird about dreams. I write them all down. I have like a note on my phone that you can just like scroll and scroll and scroll until you hit the bottom. And it's kind of a fun, like, hanging out at the bar party trick kind of thing to like just read one of my dreams randomly, because they're always super fucking weird.
Yeah.
And something about reading it, because I wrote it down, makes it less like, hey, I had this dream last night, where people are just like, I don't give a shit. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, yeah. I love dreams. I think they're the most interesting things in the world.
Do you have a specific environment you need to be in when like you would get that perfect sleep to enter that REM cycle?
No.
Okay.
It's completely random. You
All
know?
right.
Like, I think if you're asleep, you just sort of get into rhythms where you're remembering more of your dreams or less, and it has more to do with like if you drink or smoke or you know, like you're just gonna knock out and you're not gonna have as many memorable dreams. A lot of the dreams that you do remember happen those REM cycles that you have right before you wake up too. You ever
yeah.
like slept in on a Saturday or something, or a Sunday, like that like extra 30 minutes, like you had like a full dream.
Yeah, I won't get into the whole saga, you know it, but like the past 2.5 years or whatever, I have had no central AC in my apartment, so sleeping's been a nightmare.
I am well aware.
Yeah, but to spare people the details, basically I'm running off of like just like 2 fans, one that's like kind of in my window and one that's on the ground. It's just blowing like basically dust into my eyes all night.
Ugh.
So like, yeah, and I'm finally moving into a place that has central AC that I'm in control of for the first time in 7 years. And I specify with in control because the first 4 years of me living in LA, I had a roommate that like wanted to be in control of the AC, and his body temperature was like anything over 74, 75 a night is cool.
Anything over 75
is like, that's fine. It
is
was only when things got like
monstrous.
disgustingly hot, it was like, okay, let's turn the AC on. And I think back on that time, I'm like, why was that guy in control of the thermostat like your dad would have been growing up? I don't understand that. Anyway, don't want to bash anybody. I'm just saying all that to say I have central AC that I'm going to turn that bitch down to 65 at night.
I feel like the ideal sleeping temperature for an effective AC is 68.
68, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
For a one that like sucks, like 67, and as low as it goes, like 65, or when it just says low.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
well, I'm excited
for it to actually be 68 degrees, I think is perfect.
Yeah.
You know? Because it's like enough to have like sheet and a blanket, and it's like if you get up to like pee in the middle of the night, like the bathroom floor is like kind of cold, and you jump back in bed and you're like, ah.
Here's another thing that I thought was interesting, like in my misery of having to live off
Scoot your mic back a little bit.
A little bit right here. We're good.
No, like back away from your face.
Oh,
I'm
back
just trying
away.
to
No,
match.
I
I'm just
actually
trying to
don't.
match your volume level.
How am I doing now?
I'm looking over at the computer. You're doing great.
Okay, great, cool. In my misery of having to use just fans and my room being boiling hot at night, it's like
fans,
just 2 fans.
Only fans, only 2 fans.
Only fans. Yeah.
I just figured Just Fans would be like a good competitor.
It would be, wouldn't it?
Just Fans.
But what would Just Fans be?
It would be like buy overstocked discounted fans / check out people's private subscription channels.
Just Fans. You're able to sell merch. Mm-hmm. Like, we should talk to Fanatics and see if they want to open up like a merchandising line for like an OnlyFans kind of offshoot.
Speaking of like fans and shit like that, there's been so much sports betting that it's just like, since I guess like stuff got legalized or something, it's just all over the place, and all any sports TV can talk about is about like, here's the betting line, and like here's like this and that about that. Like, I feel like Just Fans might get into that as well, sports betting, because it seems like everybody is making a killing from that, and they're going to take over the world.
What if there was like betting in like the porn industry? Like, what if you're able to like bet?
Would it just be all like prop bets?
Yeah. What do you think for anybody that doesn't know what a prop bet is, can you elaborate on that?
A prop bet is a bet basically that an event will happen that has like, I guess that's what betting is in general, but it's usually like, oh, like
Coin flip.
the Cowboys are going to beat the team formerly known as the name you can't say anymore.
Yeah, now the
Here's the point spread of what the Lakers are going to do or whatever. A prop bet is like LeBron James will itch his right ear on camera 3 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
That like the more common ones are that like the length of the national anthem at the Super Bowl or the color of the Gatorade that they dump on the winning coach. That's a prop bet. It's just that like this will happen.
Okay.
Or not happen. There was a prop bet. The most famous one, at least to me, was in the 2014 World Cup. There was a prop bet that Luis Suarez, a soccer player for Uruguay, who had gotten in trouble for biting people before, would bite someone at the World Cup. And the odds were something like 65,000 to 1. And some guy in Norway bet several $100s that Luis Suarez would bite someone at the World Cup in 2014 in Brazil. And he did. And that guy made a ton of money.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right. So all that to say, I kind of want to make this interesting, without getting, everybody knows about the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift thing, right? We don't need to get into the, nitty gritty of that. But now that we know that, let's say that,
Again, though, we're dating this at like, this is what, like beginning of October?
yeah.
2023?
October 2023, October 4th, specifically. Yeah.
Checks out.
Yeah.
So if something crazy happens in the future, we don't know about that yet. Anyway, continue.
Right. I guess regardless of whether the Chiefs make the Super Bowl, there is more than likely going to be a higher female audience viewership of the Super Bowl. And I think that's great.
Like if the Chiefs make the Super Bowl, which they
If the
probably
Chiefs
will.
make the Super Bowl, but even if they don't, I think it will probably still be somewhat more interest. I don't know.
Maybe. That's an interesting question. The NFL seems to think so. Because I remember, like, right before I left to come here to, like, do this podcast session that got shat on by the metal band and turned into a band practice. Just shot myself in the head with a finger gun for non-video listeners. It was like, NFL says this is a moment we all need to lean into or something like that because Travis Kelce was like, I think we're talking about this too much. We need to calm down a little bit.
Yeah, I saw that. But I feel like women would be really good at this. So again, just to recap, prop bets are kind of the bets you make on the game that doesn't really have an impact on the outcome. So like a player like
Totally
scratching his groin area 3 times, like it's like, whoa, he actually did it, like, and I bet on that, right? I feel like
scratching his groin area.
women can make their peaked interest in the NFL that much more interesting if they bet on certain things, not knowing anything going into the game. What do you think they would bet on?
I mean, we are fully attaching strap-ons to every like woman at this point.
Yeah.
Being like, okay, well, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are dating, so you like football now. And guess what? You bet on sports now, too. So here we go. What would they bet on? I think they would bet on, like, how many times Taylor Swift is cut to in, like, the press box or something. Or an interesting prop bet would be, like, is she
Ooh, I got it.
a letter, like a letter jacket like she wore at the first one, or is she wearing some sort of like just themed outfit that like matches the color? I don't know. It'd be something.
Let me refine my question then. Okay, so again, a prop bet is kind of like just a bet that's not necessarily going to have an impact on the outcome.
Yeah.
For people that are more invested in this Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift thing,
Yes.
what are some bets that people would have about what's going to happen throughout this relationship?
Oh, prop bets on the relationship in general?
Yeah.
The number one that pops in my head is like how long it lasts.
Well, that's kind of the main bet. But like, what are some things that will probably happen throughout the course of the bet?
It's an interesting question. I feel like other ones that jump to mind are like if Taylor Swift writes a song about him.
Yes, that's a good one.
If if he dumps her, does he do it in a voicemail a la Joe Jonas?
I got one.
Okay.
What if he does a touchdown celebration in honor of her?
Does she have like a dance that we can identify?
Ugh.
I don't think so. He does like the shake it off kind of dance. He's gonna do that.
He's gonna do it.
I am putting money down on that right now.
Yep.
I'm putting money in every currency down.
Yeah. How many times he looks up to the VIP box throughout the game to see if she's there?
I mean, I feel like he would know if she's there or not.
But he still does it because he knows the camera's looking at him, looking up at the box.
Yeah.
This is all a PR thing.
Yeah.
I mean, no. Hey, you know what? Those
are harder to track. Ones that like depend on the broadcast itself of like how many times does the broadcast cut to this or that. Which are prop bets. Be like, oh, if like, you know, the president shows up, like how many times do we show the president or something? Like that's probably a prop bet. But it is harder to say, and I feel like it wouldn't be a prop bet. It'd be like, you don't know what Travis Kelce is looking at. You could be looking up at the stars. You'd be like, thank you, God, for helping me catch up.
Or how many times the sports announcer has to do a Taylor Swift pun when they pan to her.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's a great prop bet. How many dumb Taylor Swift puns there are?
Yeah.
There's lots.
Yep.
There's lots these days. I wonder if that'll cool off. I feel like it will. The attention span of culture is so low right now. If we're talking about sports a little bit, like Deion Sanders, Colorado, that was like all anyone could talk about.
Not anymore.
And then they lost 2 games in a row, and now nobody cares.
Who did they lose to last week?
USC, baby.
Oh, that's right. Fight on.
We are about like half a mile. It's probably like a mile and a half. It's hella far, even though we're in the USC area from the stadium itself right now.
Speaking of haters, I had in USC, we had probably our first person like comment on one of our Instagram posts, like just totally bashing us.
Yeah.
About like, oh, I got hit with one of your ads. I'm like, well, yeah, that's what bands do. They run ads. Like,
oh, yeah. And then you responded to it.
Yeah, I responded to it. I won't get into details. If anybody wants to know what I said, just reach out to me personally. I deleted it. It was not appropriate. Anyway, but I thought what was funny is this girl went out of her way to say how much she hated our ads, but then also said, our manager's going to love this one, and I can't believe that you got me to somehow follow your account without me agreeing to it. Like,
that doesn't happen.
That's super illegal. We didn't do that.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, all right, I'm responding to this.
I just didn't say anything because I feel like you can't give haters any juice, but yeah, like she followed us and forgot that she followed us and then was like,
upset about it.
Yeah. I'm sorry that you drink too much. I'm sorry that you have your phone when you do that.
Yeah.
It's not really our problem.
Social media is a weird place, man, in terms of like, I'm glad that you are detached from it in a lot of ways, meaning like you're not checking it every single day, right? Or like every,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a responsibility that once I open Instagram, it's like, oh, now I saw this thing, now I got to comment, and I just like don't really care. So I avoid doing it to avoid that responsibility because I have other responsibilities that like, I don't know.
And I think the people that are more in tune with what's going on in social media know that you're not commenting on something because you're just not on it, right?
Maybe. I don't know if anybody's that in tune. I wonder what people know or don't know about our band channel, you know?
Our band channel?
Account.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking of YouTube, but in this case, Instagram, of like which band member am I actually talking to right now?
Oh yeah, I usually, if I respond to a DM, I usually sign it off with like -Nick.
Yeah.
Because I guess people don't know who's like we all have access to the band account. Just
right.
FYI. So like even our manager.
Yeah.
It's a small select few people that have access to it.
The special people.
Yeah. So I'm always on it. I need to stop. we go.
So, people come to LA to chase your dreams, but you just came to chase a job.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with music at all.
That is your story, but like, did you also feel like that made you want to take the job more, knowing that LA was a dream chasing place versus like taking a job in like Orlando or something?
Not really. Music was such an afterthought when I moved to LA. I brought my drums because, well, I guess maybe this kind of answers your question, but I moved to LA knowing that this is like where like bands get formed and all that kind of stuff, right? So I was like, well, it would be dumb for me not to bring my drum kit.
100%, yeah. We wouldn't be sitting right now potting for these beautiful people.
But I mean, I kind of almost got thrown right into it.
Yeah.
The long and short version of the long story is basically, my buddy Andrew brought me to a show like one of the first nights that I moved out to LA, which is, by the way, almost 7 years ago at this point. And he's like, hey, like my friend's gonna be like playing the show, so we went out there to Northeast LA, which I've like rarely ever been to in the 7 years I've been here, but like the first night anyway.
I like it out there. It's just a little like detached from everything. It's like hard to get to.
Yeah. So we went to that and saw his friend play, and then this other guy, Shiraz, came on and played just solo. And I was like, this is incredible. Shout out to Shiraz if he ever sees this.
I love you, Shiraz. Such a good dude. Haven't seen you in several years, though.
Rest in peace, River Gods. So I approached him after the show, and I was like, hey, are you looking for a drummer? And he was like, no. But my friend John Michael is looking for a drummer. So he looped me in with John Michael. We built a band around his songs. You joined on guitar. That band kind of disbanded, and then I joined your band. And and that's kind of the rest is history.
But at the same time, like, did you have like, I guess this is like a twofold question, because right now, like, I have like a plan in my mind for like the next 3 to 5 years of like how things will go. And at that time where you like music was just not a part of it at all, you're just like, we'll just see what happens.
Oh, with this band specifically?
No, just with like playing music as you as a person.
Oh no, and I think that you probably saw that like in kind of my personality and how I viewed music, because you're like, oh, well, here's this guy who has like a 9-to-5 job and like he just happens to play drums, because that's totally what it was.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we kept playing more shows. Then we started touring after the pandemic, and then like I think that kind of the spark came back.
Yeah. It's impossible to escape. I'm glad you did that, because I feel like looking back later and be like, damn, I missed my chance. It's like a shitty feeling to feel.
I told this to my dad the other day. I was like, I mean, I think that if like things, you know, whatever happens with this band, like let's say like, you know, 10 years from now, like we're like, okay, the Sometimes Island, they did their thing. Like that chapter is closed. I don't feel this burning desire to like continue playing drums, as bad as that sounds.
Interesting.
Like I did it.
How about this podcast?
I would love to keep doing this podcast forever. This podcast is great. But in terms of like being a musician, I have no regrets. Like
no regrets.
No regrets. I'm very much like, yeah, like if this band, you know, whenever it kind of comes to an end, and it ultimately will at some point, years and years from now, you know, like I'll have a family. That'll be my priority.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, the story I was going to tell is like my dad was like, oh, you know, I was chatting with this one guy, and, you know, we were like playing golf, and I was saying how my son was in LA and he's like a musician, and like whoever his friend was like, oh, I've got to connect at like Vanderbilt University. You should tell your son to like move to Nashville. That's where the music's at. And like join this MBA program. And I was like, Dad, stop. Just FYI, like whenever the Sometimes Island is done, like I don't really care about music beyond that.
I don't know how to feel about this. Like part of it is like, oh, it's like you're ride or die. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It actually is this is an all around good feeling. Feel like you're all in on like this thing.
Yeah, this is my baby.
Nashville is like, tough, dude. It's such a 9 to 5 music world.
Yeah.
Music world as 9 to 5, you know?
I think being the age that you and I are at and what we've been able to do with this band in that short amount of time, there's no shame in continuing this project, but like, and no shame to anybody wanting to like pursue anything at any point in their life. But for me personally, like trying to start something all over again at like your later 30s, I'm kind of like, I'm good. I don't need to.
Totally.
Because I've done it. I
Yeah.
have no regrets. I pursued that dream.
Yeah.
We're talking about dreams on this podcast. I just went full circle.
This is beautiful.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, I'm all in on this. I view it as like I have 2 full-time jobs. One is like my 9 to 5 that I, work remote from, and then I have this. It's interesting. Like when you have a dream and a vision and you're so tunnel focused on it, I don't view this as like my passion anymore. I view it, and let me preface this by saying this. A lot of people say like, oh, well, I don't ever want to view music as like my job. Like,
Okay.
anything that you put a lot of time and effort into is going to feel like a job.
Yeah. I guess. I feel like what defines a job is something that you do when you don't want to do it. And that's why there's such like a big thing about like in an artistic space. But like if you're a painter and people are like waiting on you to paint the next painting, you're like, ugh, this feels like a job. Like painting a painting because you have to. Which is rare.
I guess the flip side of that, though, is like if you have a dream or a vision of like what that final piece of art is going to be, and let's say whoever I don't know how this works in the art world, like whatever like reputation you have, like or management or something like that, but whatever
The visual art world?
like the visual art world, I don't know if they have like managers or
Yeah, I have no
whatever,
idea.
but whatever their equivalent of a manager is, let's say like they go to their artist and like, you have all the time in the world to create your next piece because like the world's going to be so stoked on whatever that's going to be, right? So no, more or less no time limit.
I feel like it's inevitable to have pressure that like you need to put out the next thing.
That's the point I was just about to make. And the pressure is going to come intrinsically. It's going to come from that painter, and that's the job.
Well, it could come from whatever team because they only make money when stuff happens.
Right.
You know? And I think that is the big thing. That's what really jobs are too. Like a company like only makes money when they're able to create stuff, and so your job is a job because you have to go, because you have to like the company has to like keep going no matter how you feel about it, or if you're too tired or sick or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
And they're just like, you can have a day off.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
I seldom do I have days off on tour because I'm either doing the days that you all have off or just the days that we don't have like shows or anything. And I'm like, well, it's a Tuesday. I still got to work. So my true days off where I don't have the 9 to 5 job or any sort of band stuff on tour are like gold for me.
Yeah.
And you know what I do on those days? Nothing. It's great.
That is the classic I'm getting older tell, is when you enjoy just like not doing anything.
Yeah.
Just like,
I'm very well aware that I'm at that point in my life that I kind of foresaw coming but didn't think like would ever happen, which is being 30 something, and I'm like totally fine with not going out on the weekends. I'm like, oh, I didn't get back to you in time. I'm sorry.
I feel like once you age past 27, it's no longer required that you go out every weekend. But if you're 26 and younger, like if it's the weekend, like yeah.
Yeah.
If you're just sitting at home doing nothing, like what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know? So I don't know if that's like necessarily an old thing. I think it is just like aging out of your prime insane years. Which if you're not taking advantage of those, like what the hell are you doing? Like you gotta be insane while you can.
Yeah.
You know? I respect that.
Yeah.
I still go insane now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go there.
All right.